Every night in my dreams, we play. Hope I see you soon. To deeply a day, we'll run and we'll play. Best friends we will stay. Best friends will stay. Welcome back to my channel, Summer Heart. Last time I was here, we were coloring this, and I was reading a story. The first part of the last of my chapters. Today is going to be a finale. It's going to be longer than usual, so I'm going to try to do a lot of different busy things so that I can show you my art stuff, the coloring, while I'm actually doing the story. If I have time, I'll throw on a swatch. I usually like to do the swatching on separate videos. What I might do is I might go ahead and do a two-part video swatching, have you watching me color, and then the actual swatching explanation will be on a different video. So let me pick up where I left off. Get the other pen. So we do now for part 2 of the final chapter. Just as Persia had made friends, Penelope had also made friends. It seemed though most of her classmates were from opposite sides of the town. The classrooms seemed to be divided by those who were 6 and those that were turning 6, and those that had turned 5 recently. It was strange how 1 year made such a big difference in size. She was a shoulder taller than most that had turned 5. She was already a head taller than those that were 6, so she was taller than the average 6-year-old. Her height had always been taller than those around her. It made it easy to deal with bullying children her age and just a bit older. Maybe it was how her mom and dad taught her, but she couldn't walk away from a scene where there were more than one against just one. She found on the playground others in her classroom group would tend to be playing nearby if they had issues with other teasings, or worse. She could be swinging on swings or sliding, and there would appear others all around her. Still, this was only at school. When she was at home, she felt small. Then both parents had to work. It made her feel like she needed protection. When Mom and Dad were home, she would do what she could to be in their lap, or be held, or hovering nearby, whichever parent was awake and less busy. Sometimes she would just sit or lay down with her parents just to keep from having to be alone or in a room separate from them. It was hard times to the other children in her classroom group talking about. It was hard sometimes for her with other children in her class group talking about their sisters or brothers during recess. The coming weeks counted down to school break. She was missing being home in between the times her parents weren't busy or napping. Once she got home, there was a rush for dinner to be ready for bed with baths. Da would be heading to work late evening. Emma would be preparing for the next day's work schedule and for Penelope to be schooling. Before kindergarten started, there would be one-on-one with Ma, learning something or watching fun shows or movies. On weekends would be an outing of some type. As she had gotten older, she noticed there were less outings on the weekends. Sometimes they just sat together with popcorn and some finger food and watched a show or movie. Sometimes Mom would read to everyone from a book. The weekend after next was to be the first of school break. They would get to do a family outing together, hiking, and maybe a night of camping if it didn't storm or everything went well. Penelope was feeling bored of all this inside stuff and wanted to be out running and playing. She didn't see the babysitter as much because she was at school and Ma was working. There were days or even weeks she missed those partial days with the neighboring babysitter. She would take her to the local clubhouse for children to run around, both girls and boys, just like at school except for all play equipment. You could choose story time or more outside time. She got so excited thinking about the fun she had there when she wasn't in school. She ran over to Ma, who was folding clothes in her bedroom near the back of the apartment they lived in. Ma, when can we go back to the clubhouse? She was looking up at her ma near her elbow as she folded one of Penelope's dresses with the baby pink lacy trim and bow on the lavender for the main dress. It was one of her favorites, and she still fit it well even with her new growing height. She loved to twirl in it at school when the girls did a twirling contest to see who could avoid getting too dizzy to stand. She won most of them, but it made sense not to always win. Her mom looked over and down at her from her seating over the bed. Penelope, honey, we'll have to arrange for you to visit on some weekends. There's too much going on during the week with work and your school. We'll see about it during the break, maybe after our family's outing. Okay. Mom went back to her folding, but Penelope walked away, not feeling very encouraged. Her little lip wanted to tremble. It wasn't a no, but it wasn't a yes for sure either. There were more times when the maybe meant it wouldn't happen for one reason or the other since she had been going to school. One more week, and things would be like they had been. Surely she could wait, like Mommy said. She's becoming a big girl, she told herself, trying to push down the sadness and stay hopeful. Her emotions were wanting to run over her like a bad kid on a tricycle. She walked out to ask Da, who was getting the last of his lunch into his carrying case for lunch break. She asked for a drink. This was the last time of the weekend she would be able to get him to delay leaving by just a little. Here you go, my darling flower, Penelope. This made her. He he made a bow with his head as he handed her the big kid version of the sippy cup. This made her giggle. Something he did when he could tell she wasn't her usually cheerful self. Ma came from the back room, then giving Doll a hug and Penelope a kiss on her head, and wrapping an arm around Penelope after she turned from giving Doll a hug. Come, Penelope, we'll get our bath. Stay safe, dear, Ma, trailing off as she blew a kiss. Penelope could see Ma was also missing the family huddle
Clear out my
before Monday mornings.
deleted videos.
She helped Penelope bathe, most doing it herself that night. She kissed Penelope on the forehead and each cheek between soaping up and rinsing off. She snuggled Penelope up and whisked her off to the bedroom. Tonight Penelope would be snuggling in the big Ma and Da bed. This made her smile and nuzzle down into Ma's embrace, warm from the bath and Ma's body heat. She realized she also missed the big bed snuggling too, and she drifted, and a small tear escaped onto Ma's sleeve. The rest of the week was like a race to the finish. Ma and Dad and Penelope were on go and trying to make sure everything was done so they wouldn't be delayed for the family outing. Penelope was looking forward to the weekend. As she skipped down the hall to where Doll was standing holding out his hand, she waved bye to her friends and caught a peek at the litter of three that were just turned 5 group, and the same one that had been staring as she went to class at at the start of school. She saw the same fancy dress lady holding her hand. They both leaned back, looking around about behind the adults as they passed each other. They were on the opposite side, away from each other, but at this distance, Penelope could tell how much taller she was compared to the little girl with straight black hair and dark brown highlights. It made her think of her friend Wendy in preschool, but she had a face of confidence she'd never seen in a child like her age. It was a completely different look than Wendy oftentimes seemed to keep on her face. She gave her a soft smile, but it was sadder than her first day being dropped off at school. She didn't understand because they were all going home for a longer break than just a weekend. So Penelope smiled her biggest and waved at her as if to share some of her smile this time. It was her turn. They eyed they unlocked eyes as they were turned to go in two different directions. Her expression puzzled Penelope. She seemed happier being at school than going home. As Penelope crawled into the back seat to get into her car seat, she saw a longer car with dark windows passing by, and the back seat had the same little dark-haired girl peering out a window from her car seat. They had nearly matching colors but different brands of car seats. Penelope knew that in the movies the rich kids rode in those cars. She paused in awe for a moment, then allowed Dot to help her in, and looking forward to packing to go tonight. Penelope awakes to the loud night sounds of insects. Some night birds. She hears what her doll tells her are two different types of owls. While sleeping, it sings they had arrived at their campground and things were set up before she was awake. Da was a warm has a warming large fire surrounded by large rocks on top of dirt. Circling rocks are within a larger circle of hard dirt. The tent is set up at the edge of the soft grass. The opening of the tent is facing the fire a little further than the full height of Penelope, except with her laying down. Ma pulls out some hot dogs and what she calls skewers and marshmallows. Here's how to roast your hot dog and how you should do your marshmallows when we have some, Ma explains, showing her. Da sprays the tent and the area around them with what he calls bug repellent. The smell drifts in soft breezes, but luckily he sprayed it around the area wider than where the fire and the tent are. The tent gets a dusting on the outside and on the outside after they eat. They tell stories with their heads peeking out. Penelope looks up as the sky darkens into a deep royal blue, almost navy blue. She's enjoyed the idea of being home so much and a day with her parents. She's fallen asleep already, relaxed. Now now they've eaten a small meal, just enough to keep the stomach quiet. Mom and Dad tell stories of when they were little camping. Da points to the stars, naming the Little and the Big Dipper. The stars are so bright, it's like looking at the stars on TV on in a movie on a huge TV. As they get quieter, finishing up stories, Penelope who had been fighting sleep, settles fully into her sleeping bag and of gradient light pink and purple and blue, all all one color on and light pink, all one color on the inside. Ma's sleeping bag is a dark purple and Doll's a dark blue. They had explained when they chose them for their first camping trip when she was a toddler that the adults don't get really pretty sleeping bags, or at least they searched and found none. They had laughed, saying, just as well, because the king and queen can't outdo the princess. They tell Penelope they'll hike in the morning while it is chilly to warm up and view the lake from a distance. It's already getting too cold to swim, and winter is not far off. As she dozes and dreams cradle her to sleep, she dreams of a little dark-haired girl with dark brown highlights. She sees her face as she approaches Penelope, and something she's trying to tell her. She can't really hear her, but she's introducing herself. Hi, my name is, or hi, yeah, hi, my name is. Penelope wakes to a loud but not overwhelming bird singing in the trees like the music on TV. All of them singing at the same time in different parts. Ma and Da had breakfast heating by the fire in an iron pan. She could see they're just starting to eat. Ma beckons Penelope over. They had bathed before the drive out and snuggled in for sleep in their clothes. It's safer, Doll always told her. Helps if they have to move in an emergency because it is a wild, untamed place to sleep. After they eat, they pack up the campsite and douse the fire to avoid it causing a forest fire, and head up the path for a short hike. Penelope sees the trees opening up to a rocky path and hilltop. There's at the distance in a near circle is the lake. It looks like glass shining in the morning light. As they made it to the top, the sun had risen off the horizon. The colors projected into the clouds dampened as the sun rose, and the lake took on more of color until it was too bright with white rippling glare. They sit a little huddled up together, Dot holding Ma holding Penelope. After a few minutes in quiet, they breathing deep and enjoying the fresh, warming air, they rise to head back down. Dot offers his hand, helping Penelope down, and offering to help Ma afterward. "Miladies, let your strong king help you down the way." Ma shoos him off, patting at him. "I'm just fine, and just as she gets the words out, a large rock, a large stone rocks forward, causing Ma to gasp with a startled, brief scream. Penelope whirls around at the sound she's never heard Ma make. "Mommy!" Penelope squeals, distressed as she hears the rock and stones give way, and her Ma make a strange sound. She sees her falling away from them. Tears are coming before her brain understands what's happening. She only knows that's not the way everyone was going, and Ma's face is disappearing behind her eyes. Doll had just helped Penelope down. She's crying. Doll's voice is pitched and loud. "Periwinkle!" Penelope saw him reaching and his hand missing. She had just looked away for a second, and Doll just looked down to make sure she was stable to help Ma. It only took a blink of the eyes. She could hear Ma's sniffling and pain moan like crying. Good. She hadn't fallen off the rise of the hill, but she still felt all a ways down from standing. Dad Down went around the stones. On the level her and Dad were already standing. Penelope heard him talking, trying to soothe Ma. "Honey, are you all right? Where are you hurting? Is anything broken?" Penelope hears Ma answer in a tense whisper. I don't know, dear." Penelope hears her move. "Ouch. Ma is crying and trying not to cry to avoid scaring Penelope. "Mommy." uh, uh. Penelope starts to get closer, but Doll stops. "Penelope, princess, it's not safe here. I need you to stay there. Don't right Stay right where you are. Don't move. I'm going to try to lift your mom to safety. I'll come around, and when I do, I need you to follow me carefully back to the car." After Doll gingerly lifts Ma and slowly walks back to the safer path, he walks with Ma cradled, a rescued princess, with Penelope following, stepping where Doll steps, like when the snow is too high and the safest to walk in the same footprints. Doll gets Ma to the hospital, calling for an ER team to help him as he pulls up. She's had a bad fall, and her leg and her ankle are already turning purple, red, and green with some bleeding around the area. She has other areas on her body that are green and red from her fall. I don't know enough to evaluate her condition except I see her pupils are dilated. We'll be there in 10 minutes. Please have a stretcher ready. Penelope watches as people in blue rush to the car, leveraging Mom to the stretcher, asking her questions. Doll lifts Penelope from her car seat, running behind them. After they get Ma checked over and verify she doesn't have any organ damage and the leg was the only serious injury. She was in a mild shock from the intense pain and had just started shaking as they got her into the ER room. They told Ma they did a quick X-ray and were going to do a CT scan to get a closer look into her injury to avoid prying and causing any possible fractures to pierce muscle or tear veins. Penelope didn't understand much of it, except that only Ma's leg was seriously injured. She knew this meant Ma would not die. Doll turned to her. Penelope, baby, I hate to, but I had to call the neighbor. I need to stay here so I can help your Ma home when we're done treating her injuries. I know this is going to be hard for you, but Ma will be okay. I can't keep you here. There won't be any food or a place for you to rest. The neighbor will be picking up Miss Atenta. We'll be home as soon as possible, baby girl. Penelope hearing she will be away from Ma and Doll after just what just happens, starts crying anew. Daddy, uh, uh. Dad responds with kissing her face. I know, Princess, but Dad had to be here and cannot have you going without food and drink and other things the body needs. Children should not go without eating and we've been out here with no water. We've been out without water or fluids of any kind. Dad needs you to be brave right now. Penelope looks up at the change in his title's usage, seeing he is also crying, feeling helpless, unable to help either the ladies in his life. Penelope nods, sniffling softly, no longer going into sobs, and using her shirt to wipe his tears like he did when she scraped her knee. In less than 5 minutes, the babysitter, Miss Atenta, arrives to pick her up. Penelope barely hears her telling her they'll stop and get treats on the way home. She focuses as she finishes explaining. I'm sure you're hungry, sweetheart. When they reach the apartment, she sits outside with Penelope while she tries to eat something, her ice cream treat in a cup starting to really melt. The junior burger half eaten. Penelope barely hears her say she'll put up the ice cream in the freezer for later and refrigerate her food till she's ready to eat again. She gives Penelope a big hug and a kiss on top of her head as she wipes her own tears. I'll be back to get you if you're not ready to come inside. I understand, dear, you'll want to wait for your mom and dad where you can see them. I'll keep an eye out. This is supposed to be a skin color set of acrylic markers. I got it from Temu. And it just says acrylic markers on it, so can't really tell you what brand it is. Doing pretty good on the non-white sketching paper. I don't think I'm going to need another coat. And not bad for pastel colors. I'll begin reading right after this. Well, I've already started reading, but I mean, start back to reading after this. There's no way to really designate these. I'm not seeing names on it. I see numbers.
go back and number this off video so we have time to do this part.
Miss Atenta
We
goes
still got a lot
inside.
to watch.
Somehow, this makes Penelope start to quietly sob again. While she didn't want to go in, she didn't want to be alone. She tries wiping her tears that won't stop. Then she hears a small child's voice, a child that had been closer to her age. She tries to blink out the tears,
Okay, so
but her vision
here's
remains
Miller.
blurred
There
as
we go.
her tears stream uncontrollably. Persia hears the saddest crying she'd
Number
ever seen, she'd ever heard. Even more heart-wrenching than when she first realized
8201.
mother and father wouldn't be making the time she needed to spend with them. It was
Okay,
something she knew, but
time to
her
read
heart had sank anyway.
again.
It was her giving up on hoping to have a closeness with her parents. This was a cry that sounded like she felt abandoned and her life was falling apart. There was pain, not disappointment, an inward pain. She didn't know how the little girl was inside, how why the little girl was outside. Even if it wasn't true, she knew the little girl couldn't tell herself it wasn't. That everything would be all right. She peered closer and recognized her brown eyes with the color brown hair, browner strands of hair, and her skin. She went to the same school, and just like in her dreams, she was between snack shop and the club house. Persian bent down, pulling her handkerchief from that she was told to keep with her from a special pocket made in a dress. She handed it to this very sad little girl close to her age. The gradient, light pink, purple, and blue, appeared to catch the girl's eyes. She paused in her quiet sobs, blinking tears, to better see. Persia decided to wipe her eyes for her because she was sure she couldn't see what she was holding. As she wiped the tears, she introduced herself. Hi, my name is Persia. As Penelope had just given up trying to see who had approached, a colorful bit of she couldn't see it. Then she felt a soft touch to her cheek and gently dabbing at her eyes. The voice said next was like what the voice said next was like deja vu. Hi, my name is Persia. She finally looked up, with the tears being cleared from her eyes. It was a little girl from school, with the dark hair and brown highlights, and rich Persa's car. The shock dried what was remaining in her eyes as she tried to make sense of the fact. This was the scene for her dream. Now she knew she wouldn't. Why? Now she knew why she couldn't hear in her dream. It was like now she couldn't hear anything else barely. She was sad and was trying. She had said what when she was trying to hand her a handkerchief accept her introduction because she was crying, sobbing from the depth of her soul. She was alone, away from her parents, when one was hurt, and she couldn't be there with them. She knew that's they didn't leave her alone on purpose, but it still hurt her and still made her feel like her world was crumbling. Too much had been different for too long, and now, when they should have been able to have their usual family time together, someone got badly hurt. They wouldn't have their usual routine with Ma injured, and she already felt lonely, even with everyone around her. Her usual was changed, and her last chance to hold on to her toddler days was gone completely. She knew she wouldn't get a chance like this at all the rest of the school year. She was becoming a big girl. She was already fully potty trained, never wet the bed. The bed that was separate from mom and dad, in a separate room. How could she not feel like her world was over and and she could never be as happy ever again? Persia sat beside her and leaned against her with a hand on her shoulder. I know it feels like you'll always be alone, but it really isn't true. Your mother and father will be back, and I'm here. I'll make a call and see if it'll be all right to stay here with you today. Penelope could only stare. She didn't talk like a little girl either, and it was already a lot that she practically came out of a dream. Persia was on her way to get a snack. She looked down the way, but decided it wasn't worth allowing this heartbroken little girl to feel alone again by leaving for a moment. She turned back to Penelope. What is your name? Can you tell me now? She patted Penelope's cheek and dabbed her eyes one more time with the dry side of her handkerchief as she waited for a response. The little girl, still coming out of sobs, talked with a bit of a hiccup sounding reply. My name is Penelope. She could tell she was just staving off the sobs. She pulled some of her curly and swirly hair from her face to keep them out of her mouth and eyes. Penelope, it's nice to finally get to talk to you. Let me make a call real quick. Nanny Amara, can you see if mother and father will let me stay the night with a friend from school? She was sitting and crying alone, and I don't want to leave her. I don't think her mother and father are here yet, and I'll have them call as soon as they return. Just then the babysitter came out to investigate the newly arrived child sitting by Penelope. Why, hello! Are you lost? What is your name? Persia lifted her head and introduced herself, and gave the reason she was there. In turn, the babysitter called the parents, and Persia gave her nanny's number to the parents and the babysitter. They agreed it was all right with her parents. A child from the same school could stay the night. Penelope Small and didn't want her alone longer than she had to be, and they didn't know what time they would be arriving home. Nanny Amara showed up with her sleepover bag in hand. Night clothes, snacks from around the corner store, and one change of day clothes. She explained she would be allowed to stay until evening Sunday and picked up just in time for her own bath and tucked in after her dinner. Penelope said, Thank you, Miss Nanny Amora. Persia turned her head to look at Penelope, to look at Penelope, and laughed. She laughed that stomach laugh, that just because it was not just because it was funny, but because this little girl with her kind ways and lovely personality was the real answer to her prayers. The babysitter placed bedding for both girls. They had a small snack and laid down near each other in the room prepared for Penelope during her time over for babysitting. They talked about things that they hoped they would get to do together, places they had always wanted to share. And just before they were ready to doze, Penelope's mom and Da arrived home. Da picked up one and then the other little girl and carried them in the apartment next door. Penelope was overjoyed to see they made it home before she had to sleep, and just in time for short introductions and a warm milk before time to sleep. Persia remembered her soft rabbit and got it out of her overnight bag. Penelope remembered hers, and they talked about the experiences that led up to taking home their soft rabbit companions. They were similar in color and build, and as they nearly finished sharing, they drifted into dreamland with their soft rabbit companions between them. But that is not the end. No, not at all. Just the beginning. Only just the beginning. What, you may ask? You'll just have to come along as the journey unfolds. In a life untold and prayers of gold.